But let's talk about a player that is currently at Arsenal. That is Emile Smith Rowe. There's a lot of talk about him. There was a lot of talk about him in January, a lot of talk about him last summer, a lot of talk about him the time he had a very good season and Aston Villa wanted him. Now, Aston Villa are linked to him right now, and I'm also hearing that Napoli are also interested in him. Now, he's a player that the main reason Smith Rowe has not been playing is not because he's not a good player. It's because of his injuries. There was a time he was ahead of Martinelli in the team. Martinelli was on the bench. He was the one coming on for Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe wasn't really playing. Smith Rowe was always playing, and he was our best player. He had like 10 goals plus some assists in that season. We played, I think, 33 games. And on top of that, he was scoring some crucial goals. He was scoring against Chelsea. He was scoring at Old Trafford, at Stamford Bridge. He was basically our best player. That's why we created a song for Saka and Smith Rowe, because he was part of that. We thought they were going to, be on the same trajectory in terms of becoming great Arsenal players. But obviously now if you compare the two, even there's a time they were picked in for England, I think, together they went and played against San Marino, and both of them scored in that match. And right now the thought of Smith Rowe being in the England team is far. I think there's like almost 20-30 players ahead of him in that team. The Gordons, the Bowens, and all of those
Palmers and
Palmers, the Grealishes of this world. There's a lot of players ahead of him in that team. Now, what is the best thing for him to do if you are Smith Rowe right now? And that tells you, listen, next season you're going to feature more. You're planning to go further in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. You're going to be the one to debutize for Odegaard. I'm going to give you that number 10 role, or I'm going to use you more in the number 8 position, or I'm going to take you back to where you are in the 2021 season. I'm going to use you on the left wing. You're going to help out Martinelli. Maybe you have a different plan for Trossard, and you're going to feature for at least, I'd say throughout the season, you're going to feature all competitions, at least 22 games. Would you be willing to stay, even if half of them are from the bench and you only start 8 out of those 22 games?
Not really. When I think about Emile Smith Rowe, I think about one of the most talented players in the Arsenal squad, like just talent. Forget what they've done, forget what they have achieved, just talent. He is ahead of so many players in that squad for talent. So I think with Emile Smith Rowe, he's got to build a career, and he's a big team player, by the way. He's not what we've always said with Edin Ketia, that he can do well at Crystal Palace, he can do well at maybe at a club like Brentford. Emile Smith Rowe can build his career maybe at a club like Brighton. I would love to see me at a club like Brighton, organized project. And then I won't be surprised at some point in time if he's one of those players that are being wanted by a mega project like an FC Barcelona, a Bayern. He's such a talent, like real talent. So for me, I've said this and I'm said again. It is Arsenal's loss. It is not Emile Smith Rowe's loss. The only loss Emile Smith Rowe makes by leaving Arsenal is his childhood club. It is boyhood club. He loves the club. He breathes Arsenal. He sleeps Arsenal, eats Arsenal. Everything you can think about. His socialization, education, life is built from Hill End to the Arsenal.
Yeah.
It is Arsenal's loss. If you cannot find where Emile Smith Rowe plays, if you cannot find a place for your best talents, one of your best talents, and you want to promote Ethan Nwaneri, who, by the way, in terms of comparison, Ethan Nwaneri and ESR, the thing they have in common is they are absolutely very, very talented. So if you can find some minutes for Ethan Nwaneri, it means you could find some minutes for ESR as well, right? Yeah. The thing with ESR, and I hope his advisors have seen this, the Aston project does not have a dedicated role and position for Emile Smith Rowe. You've just talked about where he could play, and you've said maybe deputize for Odegaard, maybe play on the left wing, maybe give him minutes here and there, maybe a left 8. He's not thriving in those positions, right?
Yeah.
Emile Smith Rowe thrived on the left-hand side, and trust me, he's not getting ahead of Leandro Trossard objectively. And by merit, he's not getting ahead of Gabriel Martinelli because he doesn't have the directness, the sharpness, and the pace that Martinelli has. And by the way, he's one of the best dribblers in the side. He can beat a man on the line, and he can create very good chances on the left hand side. But in terms of numbers, in terms of production, those two, Trossard and Martinelli, are purely unbelievable. And we talked about Gabriel Jesus the other time, and we said even Gabriel Jesus would struggle to claim that position for himself because there is a Leandro Trossard who can finish like nothing, and there is a Martin who has a work ethic defensively, and his sharpness and directness is crazy. So for me, Emile Smith Rowe's way at the moment is leaving Arsenal, but not leaving Arsenal because Arsenal have let him down or anything, but in order for him to find a project that suits his talents. I like what Cole Palmer did. Cole Palmer wants to be more on the ball. He wants to a lot of freedom that you don't get at Man City. At Manchester City is position, pass, and position again, right? You don't have a lot of freedom. It's only Rodri that could have that kind of freedom. Maybe Kevin De Bruyne as well. It's not so many players. So he moves on to a Chelsea where he is his own king, right? And we have seen it this season. He's thrived. So I think Emile Smith Rowe will not fail as well. If he goes to a club like Aston Villa, if he goes to a club like Napoli that are going to crown him king, he's not going to fail. So for me, if he knows what's best for him, he's got to find a project that appreciates his talents and has a role that has been naturally created for him. Arsenal have naturally evolved past his past his abilities, and what he can offer for me.
So there's a lot to talk about on Smith Rowe. I have like 2-3 different ways of looking at this. So this season he played 13 Premier League games. I actually thought it was less than that. He played 13 Premier League games, but only 2 starts. That was against Sheffield and against Luton. Now, in my opinion, I feel like it's so tough to tell whether Arteta trusts Smith Rowe or not. I'm going to also ask you that. Because during the season, you'd probably say, no, he doesn't trust Nelson, doesn't trust Smith Rowe, doesn't really bring them on, and he need a goal and all that. But after looking at the last 1 month of the season, I'm thinking, could he? Because that game against Luton, he helped us score those 2 goals. The second one that he assisted the own goal pretty much. He made a very good run on the left side and then, his old position and cutting and then crossed the ball. But the first goal was the one I was like, because he pressed what Arteta wants. He pressed for the ball and he got it back. He gave it to, I think, Odegaard and then Havertz and I think back to Odegaard and then we scored from that. And why I say that is because on the last day, because that time, Man City was still leading 2-1, I think, and we still had a chance of winning the title. We only needed 1 goal to win the game. And he actually brought in Smith Rowe. He actually brought Smith Rowe in that game. I think he came on, right? Yeah, he came on.
Yeah, he came
I remember
on.
he came on the post. I was trying to think whether he started.
Yeah, he hit the crossbar.
He hit the crossbar and he looked very good in that game. So again, I was thinking, yes, Arteta definitely does not trust Smith Rowe or Nelson. But again, I look at him bring him in a title-deciding game when he had other players on the bench. I'm like, did that Luton game impress him maybe? And he's like, okay, let me give Smith Rowe this chance. Maybe something to impress him more in training because for players like Vieira we've had is not really impressing at training. But Smith Rowe, I've never really seen that. And I saw him pressing in both of those games, winning possession. I feel like maybe Arteta's changed his mind on him. Maybe it'd be like, listen, next one you're going to play more and stuff. So personally, do you think he trusts him or he doesn't trust him at all? Because obviously, if you look at 13 Premier League appearances, only 2 starts. Is it because he's been injured or do you think he just doesn't trust him at all? Or do you think there's better players ahead of him, period?
Your assessment is of a fan that really wants Emile Smith Rowe to stay. Like you've just gone and picked up some moments where Mikel Arteta has given him a chance, and you're like, look, he gave him a chance. There is still a chance.
At the end of the season. At the end of the season, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he knows his abilities as a manager, but he has had to work with his absence. It's the same thing with Arsenal working with a Thomas Partey's absence, and Jorginho comes into the side, and we've got to evolve a few things here and there. Declan Rice changing in position and Kai Havertz changing position as well. I think Mikel knows the abilities of Emile Smith Rowe and he knows what he offers, but it's been a long time without Emile Smith Rowe being really fit for him to go 20 games straight. Right now, for me, I am not going to say he 100% doesn't trust him, and I'm not going to say he 100% trusts him. His work ethic is there. We saw that against Luton, but then you've got to ask the question: after Luton, what happened? What exactly happened? Right? Mikel is so predictable. That's the problem with him. Like he cannot lie. He lied to us that he's going to be substituting goalkeepers and having one goalkeeper play 10 games and the other playing 2. He's so predictable. Like you can see when he's lying. So for me, with Emile Smith Rowe, the only reason Mikel has played him in a few games is to regain his trust, keep him like he did keep Edin Ketia, maybe for one more season, and then he'll move him on later on. I don't see him becoming part of Mikel Arteta's stellar squad. That inner circle of players: Rice, Odegaard, Saliba, Saka, Kai Havertz. I don't see it. Does every manager have favorites? Yes. But does our manager have a little bit more of favorites? Yes, he does. Right. And that's why I said anyone on the left hand side has got big trouble, because I don't think anyone on the left hand side is one of Mikel Arteta's staunch favorites. Like he will play him through a patch of rough form. No. If you're not doing well, he'll kick you out and bring on Trossard. If you're Trossard and you're not doing well, Martinelli is going to take your place. But Saka will play every game. Martin Odegaard will play every game. Saliba will play every game. And Kai Havertz will play every game. So Emile needs to understand this, that the manager knows my abilities and he appreciates my abilities, but I am not part of his inner circle, right? And if Arsenal sign a winger or sign a player like Sesko, it's actually going to get worse, because the more signings he makes, the more part of his personal nucleus they become. Like, look at the players he trusts more. Are they players he found at Arsenal, or players that he has brought in and he has nurtured himself and he has suggested that we go and spend money on? Is players that he has actually suggested himself. Like Ben White will never get out of this Arsenal lineup, even if Sami Makpo says, "Oh, there's an injury there." That he's not getting out of the lineup. It's the same with all the other players. So for me, I think he recognizes his qualities, but he's not bothered by his qualities really. And I won't be surprised if at some point in time, if both of them and Vieira stay, if Vieira is ahead of Emile Smith Rowe.
Wow, that is very interesting. Now, in terms of a selfish take, now us as Arsenal fans and us as people who we love Smith Rowe. I think most Arsenal fans love him. Now there's a part of the fan base that just think he's not good enough. People are like, he's not good enough anyway. Why do you guys want him to play? He's not good enough. And maybe there some reasons he hasn't been playing is because maybe the likes of Declan Rice and Odegaard are there, and you cannot really start ahead of them. Personally, I feel if he's going to play, if he has to get space, we have to convince him that, okay, we're going to give you the number 10 role. Sometimes you're going to rest Odegaard in the games that, some games you're going to rest him, you're going to get a chance, because the others, there's too many players and you're never going to get any sure spot. The only position that is open is Odegaard, who plays every single day, a backup for Odegaard.
And actually, that's the reason why he's got to leave, because with the Martin Odegaard's role, you don't have a chance. Like, you just don't stand a chance. You have a bigger chance of replacing David Raya than replacing Martin Odegaard.
But you can say someone like a Kovacic, you can place a number 6 and number 8 as well. You can look at it and like, okay, don't have a chance against De Bruyne and not a chance against Rodri, but he still gets a chance. So don't you think like you can convince him like Odegaard is not going to play all 60 games this season? You're going to get some opportunities.
The thing with Martin Odegaard, and let's start off with Mikel, by the way. The thing with Mikel is his rotation is not as stellar as that of Pep Guardiola. Like, Pep can play Kovacic in a 6 because he has rotated the team. He did play him as a 6 against Crystal Palace, and they won that game comfortably. And Kovacic scored a beautiful goal, right? With Mikel Arteta, if Odegaard is doing it right, the rest of you don't stand a chance, right? But then the thing with Odegaard is what he does is it can be done by anyone. But the way he does it, no one else can do it. That is the problem with him, right? I think he reminds me more of Xavi and Iniesta. Like, you had this Iniesta in this Arsenal, in this Barcelona setup and Spain, and you're like, you can take off Iniesta really, and get the same output. But the moment he starts delivering, you're like, okay, no one can really do that. No one is going to do that. So with Odegaard, with just a few flashbacks, FC Porto second leg, that
pass, incredible.
That pass, right?
Actually, I would say no one can do what Odegaard does. I know you've said some people, everyone can do it, some people, but the way he does it, as you've said, there's some things he does I don't think anyone can do in the pressing, but that pass.
I think if I put a Fabio Vieira into that Arsenal team and I put him in the number 10, he will find through balls. He will chip them over the top because he's got that talent. But the thing with Martin Odegaard is his overall game. For him to play at such a high intensity, chase players down, and when he receives the ball, still having the ability to scan around his environment and then play those balls through. There are not so many players that can actually do that. If you have a good number 10 that creates a lot, they're usually very, very lazy, right? If you have a very hardworking player, it's in the end, they don't create as much, right? You're like, oh, he's a bulldog, he's a bulldog, he's a bulldog. But Odegaard is a creative bulldog. And the way Arsenal set up, and many people think, many people would say, would choose different players that Arsenal really rely on in our style of play. It is Martin Odegaard. You take him off, this Arsenal team will absolutely struggle. So for me, he doesn't stand a chance with the Odegaard because Odegaard has natural abilities that he brings to the game. They're just natural abilities, things that are not coachable, things that you don't train, or things that you don't read a book to get them, things that are just natural, right? His vision is natural. His composure is natural. His leadership is natural, and there's so many other things, right? So just the point of him being a leader, Emile Smith Rowe, that is not your position. In terms of natural talent and technical ability, he can play there, right? But how many touches does Martin Odegaard take before making a good pass, especially in the final third? Very few touches. And Emile Smith Rowe, I'm not sold onto the idea that he's a number 10. I was listening to Harry Symeou on the Chronicles of Iguna the other time, and he was saying, he's a number 10. And I was like, I'm not really sure he's a number 10. He takes too many charges, loves to dribble a lot of the time. Maybe he can play there, but I wouldn't really fancy him there. I've seen his best football on in the wide areas, like more of a Jack Grealish. I think it's been likened to more of a Jack Grealish. So I would still say either he fights for his place on the left wing or it's the door.